What's the good word, y'all? It's your boy DKB here. So we had a former GM, former executive of the year, which I took particular note to. That's not something you just stumble your way into, right? Even in some of Joe Douglas's best off seasons, we haven't seen him win the award yet. But from Randy Mueller's perspective, who's the ex-GM, 35 years of NFL experience. We've seen him with the Seahawks, Saints, and Dolphins between 95 to 2007. He had his input on Zach Wilson, kind of what's going on with this whole trade debate. And much like plenty of other people, right, he feels that Zach Wilson will be traded this offseason. Everything's contingent on how he finishes out these final four games, assuming we don't give Aaron Rodgers the green light, right? Which, according to Adam Schefter, he mentioned that he is very likely that he gets cleared to play for the game against the Commanders. Again, whether we start him or not, and kind of, it's on the back burner a little bit. With that said, though, Randy Mueller's perspective on things, he mentioned there will be a market for Wilson for two reasons. First, he is talented, which we all saw again last week in the Jets' 30-6 win over the red-hot Houston Texans. And keep in mind, this was no small feat, right? The defense dominated the passing yards leader, at least at that point in time in the NFL, and C.J. Stroud. Yes, he's a rookie, but, plenty of pieces, and I understand they were missing, a bunch of weapons all over the place, but nobody's ever felt bad for the Jets with all of the injuries that we've suffered and the bad quarterback play and stuff. It is what it is. Everybody kind of takes an L like this at some point. So he does have that going for him, right? This wasn't just he got by or he did okay, he did just enough. We actually seen Zach Wilson go out there and dominate, and the defense in turn dominate, special teams consistently flipping the field as we've seen all season. So, again, kind of that perfect mix of complementary football that's been eluding us for so many years at this point. He mentioned, and second, many in the league think that the Jets' offensive roster, their design, philosophy, and execution deserve a big part of the blame. As convoluted as it sounds, the Jets' struggles on offense might actually increase the trade value of a quarterback that they have benched multiple times. And this part is what particularly caught my eye, right? So from his perspective, keep in mind, again, this is another GM. The selling point when we got Nathaniel Hackett and, of course, was able to bridge the gap with him and Aaron Rodgers was that, they made a big kind of fiasco of going back to this pure-hearted West Coast offense, right? A scheme that we've seen work in the NFL, right? Branching off of Kyle Shanahan and, the Sean McVays and all that kind of stuff. It was supposed to be this perfect marriage of a pure West Coast offense in terms of what it originally was created to be. And then, of course, marrying that with some of the, more recent minds, as mentioned, like the Kyle Shanahans, the Sean McVays, etc. And then you have Aaron Rodgers, the mastermind, essentially quarterbacking the whole thing. It seemed like it was going to be impossible for us to really fail. Number one, wide receiver. You have Breece Hall coming back. You supplement his talent with a guy like Dalvin Cook. You get Mekhi Becton returned, Elijah Vera Tucker, Tyler Conklin. You felt really good about taking the next step. There was good feelings all over the place. We never really seen that come to fruition, right? But it's interesting because nobody really criticized. Well, okay, the Nathaniel Hackett hire was definitely a very argumentative point, right? Was he the best offensive coordinator that we can get? No, at least in my opinion, it definitely seemed like a hire that we fully expected to be a way for us to secure Aaron Rodgers. But he did have a proven scheme. Yes, he was just coming off of being fired, so recency bias says, it's not the smart move to hire a guy like that. But it's the first time we really heard another GM, whether they're actively in the league or not, mention, so many of these flaws, the roster design, right? Maybe not supplementing the offensive line as much, maybe the choice of a guy like Alan Lazard over some other players that we've seen get signed for less or about the same number. And then kind of the philosophy, and then, of course, execution has been a big word for us all off season. But the kind of antithesis, the reverse psychology here, that the New York Jets so poorly handled this situation that a lot of teams around the NFL wouldn't blame Zach Wilson himself, is an interesting take, right? And I won't say it's one that I necessarily would fully debate. I've been on board with mentioning that we've seen the coaching staff ruin another quarterback for sure. But I've also kind of been on the other spectrum where Zach Wilson was never my quarterback anyways. I wanted him to succeed because we drafted him. But I don't like one-year wonders per se, right? And it's not like he had an exceptional elite 1 year like a Joe Burrows or anything like that. So it is what it is. That part is history. But from his perspective of things, it seems more likely that the Jets won't have to settle on a poor pick, right? And so you take a look at some of the financials and kind of what's going on with Zach Wilson going into year 4. I believe we have to make a declaration on if we'll pick up his 5th-year option by May. And I would say 100% of the people are going to say that's not an option for us, right? I think the 5th-year option is in the realm of $23 million a year. So, it's not a bargain number or anything like that for us. And then you take a look at what it would take if we ended up doing something crazy like cutting Zach Wilson or anything of that sort, right? An $11.2 million dead cap hit, which basically means he won't be on the team anymore if we cut him, for example, and we'll still be paying that man out. And that goes back into contract talks, right? Negotiation periods. If I recall, he was one of the few quarterbacks that was able to get that subset language taken out so that teams can't double dip, right? If we cut him, we're still paying him money. He can go to another team and then get paid twice. So that was a part of what, caused some delays with getting him into camp. If we trade him, though, we do save some money, $5.5 million of that 11.2, and then we still eat $5.7 million in dead cap. But you're getting a pick or some picks back, potentially a player if it's a player for player swap. But you'll save some money, move on, get rid of the whole headache, etc. The current projection, and I've seen that Rich Cimini mentioned an anonymous high-ranking personnel elsewhere, said that at face value right now, Zach Wilson at the highest would be worth a 5th-round pick, right? And I think at this point, for what we've seen from 3 years, that would be a luxury, right? I think some people would jump at it. We mentioned on the show before, Gunny said he wouldn't accept anything less than a 4th. For me, I think a 5th would be somewhat acceptable, just considering how piss poor it's been, right? Even if the New York Jets have failed them, you still have performed at the, so terrible that you have comparisons to the Ryan Leafs and the Jamarcus Russells of the world. So if you can flip that and get a early day 3 pick, that's nuts. But the best part is the Texan game definitely helped out quite a bit. We're facing the Dolphins, and we're going to start running to this dumb narrative that other teams are having injuries and stuff. And again, if it's, don't talk about injuries when it comes to the New York Jets versus anybody, right? We're one of the highest in the leagues. And it's not even just at the offensive line position, just in general, right? So with that said, Zach Wilson has a 4-game audition period coming up, again, pending Aaron Rodgers being inserted into the starting lineup when the event that something crazy happens. And I would say that we could probably find a way, because we've seen Joe Douglas somehow squeeze crazy value out of guys that we didn't think were worth it. I could see a world where Zach Wilson works his way up to maybe a round 2 pick, right? Potentially maybe even a 1st-round pick. I think that one might be a little extreme. Even the day 2 kind of has me a little bit shaky, but I think we would be looking at a future pick instead of something that we could use in this particular draft, right? We're talking about the upcoming draft class. The best I could see us doing is probably like a mid-day 3 pick. If we get something higher than that, I would fully assume we're talking about the 2025-2026 draft at that point, but I think you would still jump on that if you're the Jets, right? So yeah, I don't know. Having the opinion from, again, another former executive of the year and whoever this anonymous high-ranking personnel member is, though, kind of puts things a little bit into perspective, but it also does raise that question. I'm curious what you guys think. If Zach Wilson, let's just take it at face value. If we literally get kind of a carbon copy of what we've seen in the Texans game, Zach Wilson consistently averages, let's say, 235 yards. He gets 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Maybe there's a fumble each game. Maybe that changes the narrative, right? Maybe you seriously start considering, has Zach Wilson kind of finally mentally unchained himself? Is it worth talking him into rerunning the plan back? Sit for a year. Let's figure out what a contract extension looks like. We'll hand the keys to you and actually give him that red shirt gear. But I don't know. We've had this conversation so many times. Ultimately, though, let me know what you guys think. In a situation where we're definitely trading him, what are you taking, and kind of what do you think about the GM here's thoughts? And I'll catch you guys again. Peace.